Whole Foods lurker. This may not be as freaky to anyone else, but for me, it was pretty dang scary. When I was in the 5th grade, my parents and I always went to Whole Foods on Saturdays to get salads and soups. I live in a very nice part of Illinois, the North Shore, with few serious crimes, homeless people, or creeps in general, and I was too young to be catcalled. We walked into the store, went to the usual salad bar, and my parents started making their salads. I was alone and had noticed a very tall man wearing a trench coat smiling at me. Thinking nothing of it, I waved to him and started making my salad. He started to circle the salad bar, each circle getting closer and closer to me. However, my back was turned to him and I didn't notice. Before I knew it, he was literally standing right behind me, opening his trench coat, basically trying to shove me in it. My dad noticed this and started yelling uncontrollably, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? Get away from my daughter." That's all I remember him saying before the man was roughly escorted out of the store. We were told by the store manager that this man had been circling the salad bar for 4 hours, but since he technically wasn't doing anything wrong, they couldn't take any precautions. Well, until he tried to kidnap me. I was so scared for months after that. I'm 21 years old, and I still have not stepped into a Whole Foods court again. Don't shop at Whole Foods at night by Jan O'Leary. Strange things happen to me on a regular basis. Tonight was no exception. I decided to take a late evening run to Whole Foods to pick up some fresh fruit, and as I'm perusing the produce, a woman walks by me. She has wild gray hair covered by a black sun hat. She has clipped one of the produce bags to her shirt like a bib. Her face looks much younger than her hair would suggest, and I make the brief mental note of all of this and go about my fruit shopping business. I thought I heard her say a few words under her breath, but living in a city, I am used to eccentric characters, and we generally share our space harmoniously. As I am going through a great debate on what best grapefruit to pick up, I raise my eyes slightly because I have that feeling. This woman gave me the most bone-chilling stare I have ever received in some time. I think, well, that was weird. But again, no reason to deter me from my shopping goals, right? She then rushes around the corner and pushes her cart at me. I actually have to dodge the cart as it comes at me in the aisle. She says, "Excuse me," and scowls. I say, "No problem," as I pass by her. I deliberately walked away slowly because I'm not playing along with this shenanigan and getting excited. After buying a few more items in the store, slightly rattled, I make my way to the checkout. I stand in the one open line and realize she is checking out as well. I try to make myself scarce behind this guy in front of me, but she spots me and gives me one last scowl. When she was gone, I noticed she spent an inordinate amount of time idling at the exit. Thankfully, the guy in front of me had a tremendous amount of purchases, and eventually she left before he was finished. As I walked out to get in my car, I still had this creepy feeling tingling on the back of my neck. I got in my car and laughed at myself because I honestly thought I was overreacting to the situation. I checked my rearview mirror as I backed out, and I went cold and white. My heart nearly stopped beating. The woman was sitting in a gray van about 3 rows behind me. I got the hell out of there. The van turned on its lights, started to make its way out of the parking lot, and then just stopped. What the hell just happened?
Apparently I make some pretty damn good tea. By Cadia.
This is another tale from the Whole Foods that located in the old Java bar at Wild Oats. I was a 19-year-old female and had long auburn hair at the time. This will be important later. Background: the Gem and Mineral Show. Every year around February, Tucson hosts the Gem and Mineral Show. Apparently it's the largest one of its kind and attracts dealers from all over the world. Big, thick quartz crystals as big as your arm. Towering stalagmite sculptures cut in half to display twinkling mounds of amethyst inside. Fat, golden drops of amber nestling prehistoric insects in their glowing depths. Even if you weren't a geologist's kid like I am, you'd be swept away with all the wondrous items being sold at the stalls. Dust and silt from giant limestone slabs peppered with fish from ages long past settle over everything in a grimy haze. The only true language spoken amongst the vendors is that of the commerce and the occasional cough from the silt. Wads of cash exchange hands at a dizzying rate, and rare collectibles disappear in a swath of wrapping paper and plastic bags. Because it's such a lucrative business, it tends to attract those looking to make a quick buck at someone else's expense. It's not uncommon for the vendors to import their own guards to ensure safety of their valuables. The less than affluent dealers learn that Tucson is native to various scumbags, most of which are very skilled in exchanging stolen goods for something that's easier to consume in a less than legal manner. But anyway, this Whole Foods is located on Speedway, just east of Alvernon. It's a pretty central location and sits on several major bus lines. During late January through February, it becomes a bustling hub for all the out-of-towners staying at the hotels in the area. Colorful dresses from India stick out most, but everyone else pretty much chooses to don Western attire. You can guess at where they come from by eavesdropping on their conversations, or what kind of accent they have when they try their English out. It's my favorite time of the year, and I don't even mind that it's all busy. I was working the late juice bar shift, again, and scrambling to get everyone their correct orders. My espresso bean supply was dwindling from all the double shots being ordered, but the volume died down around 6 or 7-ish. Having no immediate customers, I propped my elbows up on the counter and people watched the checkout lines. Another favorite pastime of mine. Among the couple of people I'd been overtly staring at, there was a man in a tailored gray suit with a partially opened black shirt, salt and pepper hair, and a chiseled, well-defined jaw. His skin was swarthy, and he had a neatly trimmed goatee. This was before the latest series of Batman movies came out, but I swear to God the casting director had this guy in mind when he was looking for someone to play Ra's al Ghul. Being a very striking gentleman in his late 40s to early 50s, I mentally remarked on his attractiveness before moving on to people watch the next cashier's line. My glance must have caught his attention, or he had a real hankering for a spot of tea. I see him jerk his head towards me, and two huge muscled men wearing sunglasses, tight black shirts, and slacks lumber out from behind in line and escort him to my juice bar. The one that was on my left actually pulled the chair out for Ra's al Ghul and scooted him in. The guy on the right had his massive arms crossed and stood just a bit behind the boss. I mentioned it before, but both men were wearing their sunglasses indoors after the sun had already set outside. Who else does that anymore? Mr. Ra's al Ghul was very charming with his thicker Russian accent, and would have had a soft-spoken elegance to him, if not for the presence of his two bodyguards and the slightly menacing way he carried himself. He politely asked what kinds of teas I had to offer, and he said he would not be offended by the typical American assortment usually provided. After going through the usual list of Tazo teas, he sighed and responded with something along the lines of, "Surprises me." Naturally, I interpreted them as, "Don't serve me swill," or "Tweedledee, tweedledum, I will break you." As an aside, my mom is a worldly woman, and spent her childhood and adult life in England, South Kensington to be precise, but I have no idea where that's located. All I know is that she had tea protocol and preparation down to a science, and imparted a good deal of that onto me. Don't scorch the tea or pluck lemon wedges in it, and may heaven help you should you dare sweeten it with honey. If it's black tea, make sure to warm the cream before adding it, or you'll make it lukewarm. When removing tea bags, do not squeeze the excess tea off with your fingers. Wrap the string around the back of the spoon twice and gently pull, then discard immediately, etc., etc. Luckily, I had a box of tea from behind the counter that wasn't Tazo. I didn't recall the exact brand, but it was an import black tea with a yellowed parchment box and black lettering. Some customer had wanted to sample it, so they let me keep the rest of the tea bags behind the counter. I warmed some cream up with the steamer while his tea was steeping, extracted the tea bag, added some rock sugar crystals, and gently poured the milk in, holding back foam with the spoon. Stirring gently, I placed a napkin in front of Ra's al Ghul and positioned the cup on his right. I noticed that during the entire preparation process, he was staring at me intently at my hands. Looking directly at my face, he brought the cup of tea to his mouth and took a short sip. I remember seeing surprise on his face, but the details of whether it was a quirked eyebrow or a glance down at what he was drinking are kind of hazy. I do recall that he said something in Russian, and the bodyguard on his right detached himself and wandered over to a lady with slightly frizzy hair, chatted, and escorted her over to stand behind Ra's al Ghul. During their exchange, he's telling me that this is the best cup of tea he's had, and I could definitely hear excitement in his voice. He then told me that they were looking for a girl to watch the booth at the show here, and at another one, someplace in Russia. It was at this point that my ears perked up, because I'm always on the lookout for more money and a chance to travel. Of course, I expressed my interest, and he handed me a business card. It was on a very heavy but vaguely transparent cardstock with stamped gold letters and a symbol of two fish intertwined. On the English side, it gave me an address in Singapore, and on the Russian side, I think it said something else. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about the Cyrillic alphabet to even type it out. Needless to say, it was very impressive, expensive, and not something you can order from Kinko's. It was a work of art. After handing it to me, he kind of squinted his eyes, smiled, and remarked on what pretty red hair I had. As I said before, my hair's naturally auburn, but a lot of people mistake it for being red. He then motions for the woman to approach and starts speaking with her. I can tell it's German, even if I don't quite grasp what they're saying. Excited that I'd just been enrolled in my first semester of German, I waited for a natural pause in their conversation to offer a polite "Wie geht es dir?" and smiled. This apparently shocked both of them. Before she could respond, he held up a fist and started bombarding me with questions. What languages do I speak? How tall I am? Do I have a boyfriend? Taken a little back, I answered a little German, some Spanish and Japanese, maybe 5'9", and no, I didn't yet. No, Mandarin? No, sorry. I don't know why I apologized. He grinned at me and then told me that he needed a governess for his children in Singapore. His wife only spoke German, and he would like me to make him tea. I had no idea that the woman he had treated so rudely was his wife. But she did not look offended at all. The way both of them were smiling was a little unsettling. This guy had complimented me in front of his wife and had offered me a position based on my ability to make a good cup of tea, as well as my hair. Shrugging it off, I asked how long they were in town for, and he said for another week. He told me to contact the number on the card, and he would purchase the set of plane tickets, all expenses paid. Standing up now, he once again thanked me for the tea, and I responded in turn. With bodyguards on either side and his wife traveling 5 or so feet behind, he left the store looking like a Russian mob boss. And no, I never did contact him. I told my story to a few of my co-workers and showed the business card, and they all told me he was probably in the human trafficking business. As for me, I'm not so sure. I definitely got weird vibes off him. But then again, he might have only wanted a tea wench.